Welcome to Unit 2 of Organizational Behavior. And this is Diana again, your online instructor. And this week we're going to talk about some really important topics, both personally and in business, and that is decision making and motivation. Both of these are integral parts of our everyday lives, making the decisions and figuring out what motivates us. So let's look at Chapter 3 first of all, where we start to talk about decision making. We've got a general principle of decision making called the rational economic model. Now, this model assumes that when we make decisions, we're making a decision that has complete and accurate and perfect information, and that we're able to process that information accurately and without any biases. So it's assuming that we've got all the information that we need to properly make a decision, and that we're logically processing that information, and that we're going to make a decision that's free of any biases. Now, we all know decisions don't necessarily get made that way. But that's what the rational economic model assumes, that we have all this information, we're processing it, and making decisions without bias. Now, we also have a principle called bounded rationality. Now, this idea is that rational decision making is restrained or bounded based on factors related to the person making the decision or the environment in which we're making the decision. So it's saying there's some limitations to our ability to be rational. And some of those limitations might include the human mind. Maybe the person or the mind that is making the decision has some limited abilities as far as being rational. And that could be for a variety of reasons, whether emotional or intelligence. So there's some limitations due to the human mind. It could be just limitations due to the complexity of the problem or uncertainty about the problem that's being solved. And it's just there's not enough information available that is certain to make a fully rational decision. The boundary could be time pressure. There could be a limitation on the amount of time available to make the decision that limits our ability to be completely rational. So that's bounded rationality. The idea that there are some limitations to our ability to be completely rational in our decision making. We also have the administrative model that we learn about in Chapter 3. Now, the administrative model is a situation of decision making that says that we only process limited, manageable amounts of information at a time. So we don't have unlimited information available to us, and if we did, we wouldn't be able to deal with all of it anyway. So we've got some manageable amounts of information with which we can make decisions, which means we use some shortcuts and general rules. So rather than getting all the specifics of each individual situation we're dealing with, we deal with the general rules of thumb, the most likely situations, and some shortcuts. We will take shortcuts to get to a decision faster and easier. And the administrative model also says that we choose solutions that seem adequate, but still may be less than optimal. So we know this may not be a perfect solution, but it appears reasonable and adequate, and so we'll just make the decision based on that. So the administrative model says, yeah, we're not going to process every piece of information perfectly, rationally, and completely. We're going to take some shortcuts and deal with the most likely rules of thumb and just take manageable pieces of information and come up with a satisfactory solution. May not be the optimal solution, but it'll be satisfactory. So those are some of the principles that you'll read about regarding decision making in Chapter 3. You'll read about additional problem solving principles as you go through pages 64 and 65. So also on page 65, though, I do want to point you to the stages of rational problem solving. And these are outlined for you in Table 3-1. In Table 3-1, you've got, first of all, the first stage of decision making is to identify the problem or the opportunity. So, in other words, what is the business problem that we're trying to solve? Um, or what is this opportunity that's presented itself? What is it that we're about to deal with? So we could be talking about anything from a problem of tardiness in the workplace to setting a goal to sell $1,000 worth of Girl Scout cookies for our troop. I mean, just identifying some problem or some opportunity. And so the next step is going to be to formulate some objectives. What would success look like in this situation? What would we be able to do to say, yes, this problem is solved? So if the problem is solved, would the objective be to minimize tardiness to less than 3% of our schedule? Or would tardiness look like no more than 2 tardies per person each year? What would we be able to measure to say, yes, we've achieved our goal? Or if we sell $1,000 worth of orders in Girl Scout cookies, that maybe we could say that's our objective. That's what success would look like for this situation. So once we've formulated some objectives, we're going to familiarize ourselves with the problem. So we want to learn everything there is to know about this problem, including causes and effects. So what are the reasons why people are late to work? What day of the week are people most often late? Are there certain individuals that are more likely to be late than others? What are the reasons most often given for lateness? I mean, you're literally going to learn everything you can about this particular problem. If we're working on an opportunity of selling Girl Scout cookies, we'll find out how much do they cost, how many comes in a package, who's most likely to buy these, what flavors are there available. You're going to learn everything about the opportunity of selling Girl Scout cookies. And you could apply this to any problem or opportunity that you're trying to solve or take advantage of. So once you're completely familiar with the problem or the opportunity, now we're going to generate some solutions. To solve our tardiness problem, should we have people just work from home so that they don't have to be at the office anymore? Should we generate some system of rewards and punishment? Do we have people make up their time? Do we immediately fire people who are late? What's some alternatives? What are some different things that we could do to address this problem? If we're just taking advantage of an opportunity, let's generate some alternatives of how we could get these $1,000 worth of Girl Scout cookies sold. Could we have our friends take it to their places of employment? Could we set up a website to sell them? What are our alternatives? And so then that's going to easily lead into evaluating the alternatives. We're going to look at what are all the potential outcomes, how appropriate is each of these alternatives, what are the costs and benefits of each of these alternatives, how does each of these get us closer to our goal. So we're going to evaluate each of our alternatives. Then once we've evaluated all of our alternatives, we're going to choose the best one. So we'll decide based on the costs and benefits and outcomes, what is the best alternative for dealing with our problem of lateness, or what is our best alternative for selling $1,000 worth of Girl Scout cookies. So once we've chosen an alternative, we're going to go ahead and implement that plan. We're going to commit our resources to following through on the particular actions that we've decided on. And so after we've implemented that plan, we're going to follow up by evaluating our results. Did the actions that we took actually solve our problem? And what we're going to do is compare the results to the objectives we set up in step 2. Did we reach those objectives? Do we reach those original goals that we've set? So those are our stages of rational problem solving. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of or several different types of problems that we could be attempting to solve. And as you get into your reading on pages 66 and 67, you're going to learn about convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is the ability to apply logic uh, and narrow down the number of possible solutions to a problem. So we're going to start off with the problem, and using logic and information, knowledge about the problem, we're going to narrow down the solutions to what's left, and what's left is our solution. And by contrast, divergent thinking is the ability to think along many different paths to generate solutions to a problem. So with divergent thinking, we aren't assuming we're going to just eliminate alternatives until there's one solution left. We're going to think along many different paths and attempt to generate various solutions to this problem. And there could be multiple solutions to the same problem, different ways to go about that. So different people use different types of thinking, and even the same person can use different types of thinking at different times, depending on the type of problem they're wanting to solve. Some other problem types are programmed decisions. Now, these are decisions that are made by following specific rules. Whereas non-programmed is just like it sounds. These are decisions that are made by using judgment instead of by following some specific rules. So when we have programmed decisions, there are exact ways of solving the problem. When you're managing inventory, determining costs, setting a production schedule, you're making a programmed decision. There's a specific set of steps that you will go through that will lead you to the answer. So it's like algebra. There's a specific process for solving for X. Now, non-programmed decisions, there's no specific rules for developing a solution. So when we're dealing with customers or people, there may be unique situations where there's no manual for how to solve this problem using a formula or using an XYZ outline. So there are programmed and non-programmed decisions. And so next we're going to get into the decision style inventory. This is the decision style inventory that is mentioned in your discussion for this week. Their discussion for this week asks you to complete this table 3.2 on page 69 and identify your decision style, your decision-making style, and evaluate, what you think about that or how that relates to your experiences. And so I did complete the decision style inventory for myself, and I got scores of 62 in the directive and analytical styles, and then 39 and 37 in conceptual and behavioral. So I was tied for my top score, directive and analytical styles. So let's look at what those mean. When we have a lower need for structure, we will find the analytical and conceptual styles, where we don't need a formula specifically to solve a problem. But within that low need for structure or high tolerance for ambiguity, we also have types of concerns, types of problems that we're attempting to solve. When we're oriented to tasks and technical concerns, we're trying to solve problems related to tasks and technical issues. We've got the analytical problem solving style, which means we solve problems using analysis, planning, and forecasting. Being that analysis was one of my top scores, I would tend to agree with my decision style inventory. I'm very analytical. In my day job, I'm an accountant, and so in business, I definitely use planning, forecasting, and analysis to make the majority of the decisions related to corporate accounting, and also in my career as a project manager um, and an analyst. This is the type of work that I've always done, was financial analysis or financial management in some form over the last 20 years. And I definitely solve my task and technical concerns using analysis, planning, and forecasting. Now, for someone in a different type of career where the problems they're solving are related to human and social concerns, they may be more conceptual. They also, like me, will have a high tolerance for ambiguity and low need for structure, but when that occurs, they're more conceptual. They solve problems by exploring new options, forming new strategies, being creative, and taking risks. Not a lot of room for taking risks in financial accounting, but in social work or teaching or other types of careers, their problems may be better solved by conceptual people who explore new ideas and new strategies using creativity. Now, in situations where I have a high need for structure and a low tolerance then for ambiguity, I take on the directive style. Directive style solves problems by applying operational objectives in a systematic and efficient way. So it's still very much like my analytical side, except that I have some direction now. I have organizational objectives, I have a system in place that I can use, and so I use that to solve problems using those operational objectives. Because I am oriented towards task and technical concerns. Again, for those that are oriented toward human and social concerns, when there is a low tolerance for ambiguity and a high need for structure, they may solve problems through other people. This is often what managers do. They solve problems through other people. So you should find it interesting to complete your decision style inventory on page 69 and see what it says about how you make decisions, and see what you think about that and how that compares to what you have done in your career or what you plan to do after you finish your degree maybe. So I think you will find that very interesting, and it should lead to a really good discussion this week. Continue your reading throughout Chapter 3. Even some items that I didn't have time to cover in this video could potentially be on your quiz that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And also you'll want to read the entire chapter, because when you do your Unit 3 assignment, any of the information in the chapter could apply to it. So make sure you read Chapter 3 completely, and you're going to find some additional interesting information there. But in the interest of time, I want to move on and discuss a few things with you from Chapter 4 over motivation. So let's look at some types of motivators. Motivation, first of all, is a person's direction, intensity, and persistence of effort in attaining some goal. So when we talk about types of motivators, we can have an intrinsic motivator. Intrinsic motivators are inner influences that cause a person to act. So my intrinsic motivators are my personality, my emotions, my personal motives, goals, or expectations for myself, and my personal needs, things that I need. And we'll talk a little bit about needs later. So those are intrinsic motivators. They come from inside of me. It has nothing to do with my environment. So then by contrast, extrinsic motivators are external influences that cause a person to act. Extrinsic motivators might include rewards and punishments that are put upon the person. So things that come from outside of me that are provided by the company, which might be stock options. It might be a punishment in a write-up letter. It could be a certificate of perfect attendance. Those are all extrinsic motivators that come from outside of me. These are outer influences that cause a person to act. Now, I've got money on here because money is considered the universal reinforcer. Money is considered to be universal because you can fulfill so many other things with it. If your intrinsic motivators are related to personal motives and goals, money might move you closer to intrinsic motivators. If your motivations are related to stock options, wealth, certainly money will help you to achieve that. Money can be exchanged for so many different things that it's considered to be the universal reinforcer. So let's talk about needs. I said we were going to talk about needs and motives. So I have intrinsic motivators that are related to my personal needs. Needs are some unconscious patterns developed early in life and instinctive that lead me to emotional and behavioral preferences. Now, here's an example. I may have a need for achievement. This comes from inside of me, and I have a desire to succeed by reaching certain goals. I need to achieve, which means I want to get to the top of Mount Everest. I want to be awarded the Nobel Prize. I want to be voted prom queen. I want to achieve something because I want that. I need that within myself. Some may have a need for power. This is a power is a desire for dominance or social control. I want to be the ringleader. I want to be the manager, the boss. I want to be in charge of making the decisions. I want to be able to dominate. That's something, again, that a need that I have that would come from within me. Some people may have a need for affiliation. They want to establish social relationships. A lot of times we have managers that have a need for affiliation. They are often improving their personal personality, networking just to know people. You know, those who you know type of managers that want to be connected with people who have power or achievement. Not necessarily wanting it for themselves, but wanting to be connected with those people. So when we continue to talk about motives, we're trying to meet our personal needs, and we have various motives. The explicit motives are the reasons we give for our actions. These are our conscious motives. So we may have within our motives some extrinsic aspirations. These are explicit motives that are materialistic and social. So these are things that, you know, we want to do, we want people to see that we've accomplished. These are explicit motives that are materialistic or social, and they're called extrinsic aspirations. Now, of course, we also have intrinsic aspirations that are explicit motives that are psychological and interpersonal. So people with intrinsic aspirations want to enhance their self-acceptance, their personal affiliations, or maybe even their community contributions. So as we talk about motivations and needs and motives, it makes sense to start looking at how this relates to the way that people manage. And you're going to get into that in Chapter 4, where it discusses theories of management. And this managerial motives are summarized by the Theory X versus Theory Y model. And this is proposed by Douglas McGregor, and you can read about him in the chapter. But it tells us that Theory X managers are managers who tell people what to do, judge their performance, and reward or punish them. This is what Theory X managers do. So their explicit motives for their actions are their beliefs that a manager's job is to assess productivity. That's what they believe a manager is there to do. They believe that people prefer to be directed, that people have little ambition and they dislike work, and that they're basically going to do what they're told or forced to do. So they tell people what to do, and they use punishment as a way to ensure that it gets done, because they believe in general people dislike work and won't do it unless there's a threat of punishment. So that's a theory X manager. Now, theory Y managers are those managers who emphasize relationships. They encourage self-control. They encourage people to be actively responsible for their careers and make their own decisions regarding their careers. So the theory Y managers have explicit motives because they believe they should create a climate that's conducive to employees' individual growth. That employees have the capacity for imagination and creativity and problem solving, and that companies should allow employees to make decisions and maximize individual responsibility and encourage people to learn. So there's different types of needs that people come to the workplace with, various motives they have for the work that they're doing, and then managers also have explicit motives for how they manage and react to employees. Very interesting reading there in chapter 4. As we continue, let's look at goals and beliefs. Goals are some major motivators in our lives. Our goals is what makes us get up and do the things that we do. Chapter 104 tells you some best practices for setting goals, like set specific goals that are tough but achievable, and establish some feedback for your goal achievement. So pay close attention to that area there for both your business and personal lives. Then we talk about beliefs. Beliefs are just what it sounds like, what we believe to be true, and our expectations are based on our beliefs. So the expectation theory of motivation says that people's effort is determined basically by their beliefs in 3 specific areas. First, expectancy. It says that people's effort will lead to an acceptable level of performance. If I believe and expect that if I perform well, then I'm going to that's going to lead me to have an acceptable level of performance. So we're talking about expectation theory. Expectation theory says that our effort is determined by our beliefs in 3 key areas. The 3 areas are expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. Now let's look at expectancy first. What our belief is regarding expectancy is that our effort is going to lead to an acceptable level of performance. So if we put forth effort, then our performance will improve. Now sometimes our effort doesn't pay off in improved performance because we may have been sabotaged by a jealous coworker. So each person has a certain expectation as to whether their performance is going to pay off. And their belief regarding that is going to help to determine their motivation. Now, the second is instrumentality. Now, this is the belief that performance level I achieve is going to result in certain positive or negative outcomes. And so my belief on this depends on my previous experience with certain tasks. So if I've done a particular task before and it had a negative outcome, my belief is probably going to be that repeating that action is going to lead to another negative outcome. Now the third concept of expectancy theory is valence. And this is a belief that the outcome obtained was going to be valued. So if we're not certain that our performance or our work is going to be valued, then that's going to reduce our level of motivation. So that's where we talk about expectancy theory on page 105. And we are hitting right up on 30 minutes, so I don't want to hold you too long, but I do want to talk a little bit about rewards and punishment. Um, when we talk about rewards and punishment, this is done in order to either reinforce or change behavior. So when we are talking about positive and negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement is in order to repeat behavior. Negative reinforcement is to stop a behavior. So there's several different ways or descriptions of punishment. So a punishment is any event that decreases the probability of a behavior being repeated. Now, you can have punishment by application, which is when you do something to a person that they don't like. So a fine, implementing a fine would be a punishment by application, charging them for something that they don't like. You could also have a punishment by removal, and a punishment by removal is taking something from the person that they want, such as taking a player out of the game would be a punishment by removal. So lots of information in Chapter 4 about punishment and rewards. You're also going to read in Chapter 4 about performance appraisals and different types and issues that come up with performance appraisals. You may have a judgment-based evaluation, and this is rating employees based on traits that the management deems to be important. And so that was what we call a judgment-based appraisal. You can also have a halo effect, which influences the manager's impression of the employee on every item of the evaluation. So in other words, they're saying, because I like this person, everything they do kind of looks a little bit better to me when I'm writing their appraisal because I just like them. Or the fact that I dislike a person can affect everything that I'm appraising them on. Maybe everything I'm appraising them on looks a little bit worse to me just because I don't like that person. So halo effect happens. Of course, it's to be avoided, but understanding as a manager who is writing them, understanding and being able to identify that the halo effect is there. You can also have results-based evaluations that rate employees based on their actual performance over time. And you may also have seen behaviorally based evaluations in which observed behaviors are rated based on the frequency of their occurrence. So lots of information about performance appraisals that you'll want to gather in Chapter 4. Let me go ahead and talk to you about our weekly assignments. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have discussion this week, and you're going to talk in it about your decision style inventory from table 3-2, I believe it was. So make sure you complete that and join in on the discussion. In the discussion, make sure you're using regular English. You shouldn't be using text language like using the word you instead of you. Things like that are going to cause you to lose some points on the discussion area. That should be in proper college level English. And punctuation. Make sure capitalization, you're using capital letters at the beginning of the sentence. You're using appropriate punctuation at the end of your sentences. So make sure that your discussion is college level communication. You're also going to have a weekly assignment, and you're going to complete a case on Google for Chapter 3, and that is listed. The assignment pages are listed in the course content area under Unit 2. So when you're talking about Google, it's related to Chapter 3, which means you're going to be talking about how decisions are made at Google. So again, after you read Chapter 3 and then read the Google case, look back over the chapter and think about which course concepts apply to the activity you see being presented at Google. This assignment should be related directly to the reading that we've just done. And the same thing with Hiscox and Chapter 4 assignment. Again, the page number is listed in the course content area, but ensure that you're answering the questions related to motivation and other Chapter 4 concepts as they relate to the company Hiscox that's in the assignment. Most people got that the first week, but there were some people who just gave general answers that did not relate to our reading or our discussion for the week. So make sure you're applying the course concepts in the chapter to the assignments, to the questions that are assigned. My office hours again are posted in the course content area. They're basically Mondays and Tuesdays, 8:30 to 10 p.m. And you can set an appointment with me if you like, if those times don't work for you and you have additional questions. Or you can email me at any time and receive a response within 24 hours. So I will leave you to that and say good luck on week 2 and enjoy your evening.